everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and today I'm going to be starting a reading vlog where I read horror books written by women. I started reading horror books a little over a year ago, probably like a year and a half now. I've been reading horror books more regularly in my reading. And ever since I started looking for horror books to read, books that I'm hearing about that are really popular horror books, I've just noticed there is a lot of male authors in the horror genre. Of course, we all know about Stephen King. He is the king of horror, and it just feels like a lot of male authors are out there trying to also be Stephen King. And there's just so many male authors out there in horror, and I really just like to be able to diversify the types of authors I'm reading from, the types of stories that I am reading. And so this spooky season, I wanted to be able to dedicate a reading vlog to just reading horror books that were written by women authors, just to give the women horror authors out there some love and attention. So in this vlog, I have 3 different books I'll be reading, and it is quite a mix of horror books. So I have The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. I believe this is a pseudonym. This author, I think, also writes for children's books, and so this is a pen name for their horror books. She is also known as Ursula Vernon, and she's the author and illustrator of many projects, including the acclaimed horror novel The Twisted Ones and the webcomic Digger, which won the Hugo Award for Best Graphic Story and the Mythopoeic Award. Her work, The Tomato Thief, won the Hugo Award for Best Novelette, and her short story Jackalope Wives won the Nebula Award for Best Story. She's also the author of the best-selling Dragon Breath and the Hamster Princess series of books for children. Find her online at redwombatstudio.com. So I've heard a lot about this book. I've heard it's a little bit genre bending. It has some fantasy elements and some horror elements, of course, as well. I think it's like portal-y type things. So let me check out the synopsis. Oh my gosh, this is set in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. But newly divorced and living back at home in rural North Carolina, Kara is helping out her ailing, eccentric Uncle Earl at his house, which doubles as a tourist hotspot, the Glory to God Museum of Natural Wonders, Curiosities, and Taxidermy. While Kara is closing up one night, she discovers a mysterious hole in the drywall along with the museum's overstuffed hallways of oddities, an opening that impossibly leads Kara and her new friend Simon to a sprawling area that simply cannot be part of North Carolina's plane of existence. So it is a portal book. And as they explore this new world and bear witness to its cryptic warnings, Kara and Simon soon realize there is far more danger here than they first anticipated, for they have stumbled upon a place of unyielding madness and terror, haunted by abysmal creatures that gather strength from one's innate fear of them. So it kind of sounds like it's got a little bit of like monster, sort of like Bird Box-ish vibes, with it growing on your fear of it. The cover is stunning, and I've heard nothing but good things about this book, so I'm excited to check this one out. Then we have a classic, and that is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is literally just like 15 pages long. It's super short. It's just a little short story, but I really wanted to read this for a long time, and I also really love this edition with the actual yellow wallpaper. I just heard about this classic a lot. I don't really know what it's about. I think it's about a woman being driven to madness and isolation. But yeah, I wanted to throw a classic in here as well. And then we have a new book that just came out, The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Catriona Ward was born in Washington, D.C. and grew up in the United States, Kenya, Madagascar, Yemen, and Morocco. She studied English at the University of Oxford and later earned her master's degree in creative writing at the University of East Anglia. She won the August Derleth Award for Best Horror Novel for her debut, The Girl from Raw Blood, and again for Little Eve, making her the first woman to win the prize twice. Little Eve also won the Shirley Jackson Award for Best Novel and will be reissued by Nightfire. This book sounds incredibly interesting, and I can't really tell what it's about. I don't know if it's a haunted house story or what the vibes really are. The synopsis says, in a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of 3. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time, a man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory, and a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. An unspeakable secret binds them together, but when a new neighbor moves in next door, what is buried among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. The Last House on Needless Street is an immersive and shocking journey that will keep you guessing until the last page. I haven't heard anyone talk about this yet because it just came out, so I'm really excited to check it out. It sounds like it's gonna be kind of weird since there's a cat that loves to read the Bible, and also this author sounds really well acclaimed, having won multiple awards. So if I like this, I definitely think I'll want to check out her other books as well. So these are the books I'm going to be reading, really like 2 books and then just a short story, but I'm really excited to check these out. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started with The Last House on Needless Street since it's new. I want to be able to read it before I hear other people talking about it, and I'm just really intrigued to figure out what the heck this book is about. So I'm going to get started on this one, and I will update you once I get a little bit in and can understand what the heck this story is about. Hello, it is the next day. I'm pretty sure I look exactly the same as I did yesterday because it is now that part of the year where I just pick a sweatshirt and wear it every day, and that is my outfit of choice. But it is the next day. I did read The Last House on Needless Street last night. I started getting into it, and I am around page 90. There's like a little over 300 pages, I think. So I made a pretty good dent in the beginning of the book, and I'm having a lot of thoughts and feelings. So I read some last night, I read some again this morning. In the very, very beginning, I was very confused. I was quite confused. I was like, this is a very strange book. This is a very weird book. This might be the weirdest book I've ever read. And then as I continued reading more, got past like the 30-ish page mark and really started to get more into the book, it kind of just feels like any other thriller at this point, just with like a slightly different weird format. So I'm really interested to see where it's going to go. I can't tell if this is going to become something great and horrific and super interesting, or if it's going to just end up feeling like a thriller. I'm really intrigued because Stephen King's blurb on the front says, a true nerve shredder that keeps its mind-blowing secrets to the very end. And so far, there's not many secrets. Like right in the beginning, I was pretty confused, and then once you kind of figure out what's going on, I'm just like, what's going to be a secret or surprise? Maybe my mind will change. Maybe something mind-blowing is going to happen. But so far, it's just like pretty straightforward, and I can kind of see where the story is going to go, I think at least. So let me tell you a little bit of what this book is about. When I was telling you before, I really haven't heard much about this book. I haven't looked much into it, and so I was just reading based off of the synopsis that is in the book, which says that there's this boarded up house on a dead-end street where 3 people live: a teenage girl who's not allowed outside, a man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory, and a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. A secret binds them together. A new neighbor ends up moving in next door, and that is when it's going to cause drama and their secrets might come out to haunt them. So that is the context I had going into this book. Now, once I started reading it, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, whose perspective am I reading from? What is this dude? Who is this dude? What is this family? Like, I was just like really confused. So I was like, oh, this is going to be really compelling. I'm not going to spoil anything for you here. I don't want to spoil anything because I think that's the interesting way to get into this book. But I ended up going on Goodreads really quick just to like glance at reviews or like average rating, and the synopsis on Goodreads is completely different and completely gives away some of that initial mystery element of the book. And so if you're going to read this, I would recommend that you don't read the Goodreads synopsis. Just know what is on the jacket cover and kind of go into it with that information, because that initial kind of surprise is sort of fun to figure out what's going on here. But once you know that, it just feels like any other thriller. So not really sure where we're going to go here. I definitely don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm just going to talk generally about the book so far and some of the things going on. So you do get to read from the perspective of a cat in this book, which is really interesting and really fun. The cat has a really funny personality. The cat is very religious. That just creates this like really unique tone to the book. Then you have the main character that you're following, and without giving anything away, I'll just say that he is unlikable. And the trope and circumstances that are happening in this book is one that I really don't like in thrillers, and so that's why I'm just like really curious to see where this is going to go, what direction it's going to take, and if I'm going to end up really loving it and its weirdness, or if it's just going to kind of go down the path that it seems like it's going. So I'm going to read a little bit more of this later tonight and see if I can make a pretty good dent, see if I know where the story's going, and I will check in with you later. Next day, I was just filming some recommendations videos. If you're wondering why there's such a setup here right now, this is not usual for my vlogs. But while I was sitting here filming, I wanted to update because I did finish The Last House on Needless Street last night, and I have things to share. This book went in a direction that I absolutely in no way was anticipating. I never would have guessed that this is where we were going with this book. I mean, as I started reading it, as I started piecing some clues together, I started to have suspicions of what was going to happen. But from the way this book is advertised, the synopsis, just the look and feel, and just hearing about it, I just would have never thought this is the direction that it was going. And honestly, I'm extremely conflicted on how I feel about this book. It's definitely one I want to think about carefully before slapping a rating on or recommending to others, because it deals with a trope that is pretty controversial in the thriller and horror world. But the author is aware of that, and there's an author's note at the end where Catriona Ward addresses that, and it seems as if she's trying to do something different with that trope, but I just don't know how effective it was. And intent versus impact, those are two different things. So I'm just trying to think about the impact of this story and how I feel about it. I'm really struggling because this book just came out, so like no one else is talking about it yet, and I was talking about it on Instagram, and I had some people reach out like, oh, what do you mean? Like, what could be going on? Like, what do you think about it? And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but I'm conflicted because, you know, it's hard to talk about without spoiling. So I really can't wait for more people to read this. It's a lot of people's book club pick this month, so I'm excited to hear the discussions for that. I think it's gonna be great for discussion. I think people are either gonna love or hate it. I think it allows for some really complex discussions about what it addresses. And so I'm looking forward to that. Until then, I'm gonna be marinating on my thoughts on it and what I think. From a pure like reading perspective standpoint, I think it was well written. I think it was interesting. I think I enjoyed the multiple perspectives. I think it was an effective horror story. It had that creepy factor. The characters were interesting. So it's really just a matter of like where the story goes and what it does that I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. So I'm still figuring that out. But I think no matter what, I would say that I would read from this author again because I think this was a well-written book. I just don't know about what it does. This is probably extremely confusing to talk about without spoilers. So if you're really curious and you don't care and you want to be spoiled, or if you've read this book, I'll talk about it in spoilers for a very brief moment. I'll throw the spoilers banner on the screen and you can skip to where the spoilers banner is no longer present if you don't want to hear the spoilers. But what this book does and what it addresses is dissociative identity disorder. So when you're reading the story, you have this man, Ted, who has these memory gaps and is in this house. And then he has his daughter, Lauren, who you're led to believe is this girl that he kidnapped 11 years ago. And her sister has now moved into the house next door because she suspects that he took her sister, which you're led to believe that he did. And then there's also this cat perspective who is like really obsessed with Jesus. It turns out all of those personalities are within Ted, and he has dissociative identity disorder, and he has created this identity of Lauren, who is his daughter, and then this cat, Olivia, and then there's also other personalities within him that you don't get as much exposure to. And so that's the first sort of twist. Well, the first twist is you find out Lauren and the cat are the same person, and you think, okay, he kidnapped Lauren and she developed dissociative identity disorder and created this cat personality within her to cope. But then you find out they're actually all a part of the Ted system and that they're all one, and he created these personalities starting because of the abuse and trauma that he endured from his mother growing up. And you come to learn that his mother is the one who caused the deaths of a lot of children and also ended up taking this girl Lauren, or Laura, I think maybe was her real name, but she didn't kill her. You find out that the reason that that girl died was because her sister neglected her, and her sister knew that she was the cause of her sister's death, but I guess she like blocked it out, or she was still trying to hunt like who ended up taking her sister's dead body because her dead body ends up disappearing. And the answer to that is it was Ted's mother, because she was a nurse who was doing a lot of controversial things to children, including him, which caused a lot of trauma. And so the author explains that she discovered DID recently, which I think is surprising that she didn't know about it before, but she ended up doing a lot of research, talking to different people in support groups, interviewing people with DID, and ended up wanting to write this book about how people with DID will have these different personalities to help them survive, and it's a story about survival. And she wasn't trying to create a story about villainizing a person with DID, but I just don't know, because Ted, you are led to believe he has taken this girl and does really terrible things to her, and so he is kind of villainized most of the story until you find out, wait, none of that really happened, like he didn't do that. So yeah, that's why I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts, but that's kind of where I stand right now. Anyway, because I'm conflicted, I I don't really know where I stand with a rating. I think maybe like 3 stars, but also I just need to think about it more before I decide on that. So I'm just gonna sit it down, let it marinate over the next couple of days, and then I'm going to jump into the Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher next. I haven't started it yet. This bookmark's just in here, but I'm really excited for this one. I'm excited for the fantasy element and to see where it goes. So I'm gonna hop into the first 50 pages or so of this one, and then I'll check in with you once I get an idea about the story. Vlogging, I almost accidentally read an entire book without updating you at all, and that is what has happened today or the past couple of days. So I have started reading The Hollow Places, and I'm over halfway through with it. I have just been flying through this book. I don't read paperbacks often. I typically read a lot of big hardbacks, and something about a paperback, I can just fly through a paperback so fast. It just feels smaller in my hands, and I feel like I'm flipping the pages faster, and then I just get sucked in, and then I just keep reading, and yeah, I don't know, I just fly through paperbacks. But anyway, I am literally just stopped in the middle of a chapter in the middle of a sentence on page 193, and I have had quite the roller coaster experience with this book so far. So I don't think I ever explained what it was about because I didn't really know, or maybe I explained what it was about but I just read the synopsis. I don't remember, but from my perspective of what this book is about, you follow this woman named Kara who is going through a divorce, and she's not in a great spot. She ends up moving back in with her uncle who owns and runs this museum of oddities. And so when this book starts, it was so enticing. I was really loving it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a 5-star, like within the first 30 pages. I love Kara's wit and tone and sarcasm. She is just such a fun character to read from. It's also cool that this is set in North Carolina because I'm from North Carolina, and the Museum of Oddities was super fun to read about. It just created this really fun, weird, spooky atmosphere, and I was adoring it. I was loving Kara's relationship with her wacky uncle who runs this museum. And then there is this guy who works in the coffee shop beside the shop that she also starts to become friends with, and he is also zany and wacky in his own way. And so I was really just loving it, and I just really thought it was gonna be a 5-star. And then things took a turn, and so what ends up happening is Kara ends up finding a hole in the wall at the museum and ends up going through it with this guy whose name is Simon, and they end up going through as like a portal to another world. And then you spend a lot of the book from that point in that other world, and then once they're in that world, I just kind of started to lose interest, which is a similar feeling I had when I was reading another book that was like this. I haven't read a ton of books that are like portal fantasy to another world, but it reminded me a lot of that Shauna Maguire, but she wrote it under a Deborah Baker, Over the Woodward Wall book, which is like a spin-off of Middle Game. It very much reminded me of that. I also see how this could be like Every Heart a Doorway or the Wayward Children series vibes, but I've only read the first book in that. I know that's all about children who go through portals, but in the first book it's set like in the real world, so I didn't see any of that. But it definitely reminded me of like that style of writing where it's just like characters on an adventure in another world discovering things, and that kind of was very boring to me. I don't know. I couldn't figure out what was going on, like if it was because I felt like they were going to make it out of there, so the stakes weren't super high because they were just going to explore this place until they ended up going back, or I don't know, just something about it doesn't really intrigue me that much as a trope, and so I wasn't having the best time with that. There is like really cool, spooky, weird things that happen. It's like you're just there for the vibes. I think I'm just not someone who cares about world building at all. I really care about characters, and so I like world building in terms of like building an atmosphere, but I really care about the characters more, and it felt like in that portion we were just spending so much time just caring about the world, and we kind of lost the characters for a while, and I really liked the way the characters started so strongly. So anyways, not to spoil anything for you, but around midway through the book things take a bit of a turn, and now I'm enjoying it again. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster of loving it, getting kind of bored, and I'm liking it now again. So I don't really know how the rest of this is going to play out, how many more turns it will take, if I'm gonna love it, if I'm gonna hate it, if I'm gonna feel meh about it. I don't really know. It's gonna be an adventure. But I figured the next time I pick this book up, I would probably finish it, which will probably be tonight. So I did want to update you before I did all that. So I'm just gonna read the rest of this, which is a little over 100 pages, because there's about 330 in this book. And then I'll check in and we'll see how it goes from here. Okay, so I finished The Hollow Places. My dog really wants me to play with him right now, and he keeps bringing me his ball, so I'm just gonna have to play with him right now while I also tell you about this. So, this didn't end up going back in a direction that I ended up enjoying. It definitely got better for a minute, but then it just got boring again. And I think my main kind of thing with this book is the pacing is just a little bit weird with how much time you spend in particular places or on certain parts of the story, and like when that happens, especially if you look at it all overall. We're playing tug of war with this ball, which is difficult to do, but it's his favorite thing to do. Anyway, I don't want to say that I disliked this book, because it wasn't awful. It's not a bad book. It was just not really my thing. I think portal fantasy horror stuff is just not really my thing. So I think overall this book lands around like a 3-star for me. There were definitely points that I enjoyed in this book. I really love the voice and the writing style. I think I could enjoy other stuff from this author. I don't think I'm gonna check out The Twisted Ones, which is the big one that is talked about from this author, because I read the synopsis and I just feel like it's gonna be kind of similar to this one. And so I don't think that'll be for me either, but I could see myself enjoying something from this author. I just don't know what it is about the portal stuff. It's gotta just be the world building, because I just don't care about world building that much. Beyond just like creating a spooky atmosphere, I really just want to see like characters go through some stuff. And as I mentioned in previous clips, you really just kind of lose the characters a little bit in this, which is a little sad, but it was still not a bad time. It was definitely just like a solid 3-star experience. And I think there are people who could really enjoy this. If you really like things like the Wayward Children series, or what was the other book that I related this to before about portal stuff? I don't remember. I'll put it on the screen if I remember. But if you really like things that involve going to different worlds and exploring and then creepy creatures and things like that, then I think you'd like this, especially if you like lighter toned things, because while this is horror and spooky, it's also just like a little light-hearted and funny at the same time, or like sarcastic and witty, I guess would be a better way to put it, which I think is really fun, and I think makes this author's writing style very unique and fun. So now I'm gonna pick up the Yellow Wallpaper short story. It is only 15 pages, I think, so I'm just gonna read this really quick, and then I'll let you know what I think about this too. But I'm excited for this. I really don't know a whole lot about it. I really like this cover. I'm really enjoying this wallpaper, but I'm just gonna jump on in. We'll see what I think. Hello. It has actually been a couple of days since I finished The Yellow Wallpaper. I read it as soon as I sat down and was talking about it. I sat down, I read it, I finished it, and I fully intended on just turning the camera back on and talking about it then and wrapping up the video. But I really wanted to take my time with wrapping this video up, and so I just put this off as well. So first we'll talk about this really quickly. It's just a very brief short story, so I'll give you my quick thoughts on it. And then I just want to talk about all the books I read in this vlog as a little bit of a wrap up and how I think this vlog went. But as far as The Yellow Wallpaper goes, I thought this was quite an enjoyable short story. There obviously is only so much you can expect from a short story. I wasn't expecting this to be mind-blowing, 5 stars. Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm not even gonna rate this because it's 15 pages. I don't know how you put a rating on something like that, but I will say I really enjoyed it. I think this is the perfect season to be reading a story like this. It has really strong writing that's really accessible to read even in the modern day, which is what I really appreciate when I read some older horror stuff, because sometimes with classics I just get bogged down in the language and it just feels like there's all these barriers to entry, and I always worry that I'm not gonna be able to like connect to the story. But this one had no trouble with that. It made a ton of sense right off the bat and I did enjoy it. This is a story about a woman whose husband husband is a physician and she is dealing with mental health things. And if you know anything about the history of women and mental illness, many years ago, you would just kind of get written off for hysteria and it wasn't really taken seriously. I mean, even today we're still facing some of that, but we definitely have come a long way from where we used to be in the past. So she ends up getting put into seclusion and she tries to express, I think I need to be socializing. I think I need to like keep my mind busy and like go do things. I don't think sitting in this room is going to help me just staring at this wallpaper all day. If you don't want to know where the story goes, like just skip for a couple seconds, but it's a very old short story. And even if you know how the ending goes, I still think you would like it, but I will just spoil, I guess, how the ending goes. She ends up starting to see things in the wallpaper and sees another woman there. She starts like clawing at the wallpaper, trying to pull it away, trying to get to that other woman. And then basically by the end, if I understood it right, she sort of becomes that woman who was trapped in the wallpaper, and it ends with her like really creepily crawling along the perimeter of the room with her shoulder pressed against the wall as her husband like comes in and she's just crawling over him because she's just doing her thing. So obviously some metaphor there with like being trapped and how she saw that woman is trapped, which is herself. So yeah, I thought it was a good story. I just love gothic vibes. Definitely has great gothic vibes. I can see how this inspired other stories. This definitely made me think of Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I do not know if she was directly pulling inspiration from this story, but that story also has that element of a woman trapped, not being taken seriously, illness things, and weird stuff going on with the wallpaper. So I would be very surprised if that wasn't intentional. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I would recommend picking it up, especially during the spooky season. Okay, so now I just want to talk about my thoughts on all the books and the vlog in general. So I thought about canceling this vlog or like morphing it into something else after I finished The Hollow Places and didn't end up like adoring it, giving it 5 stars. I began to wonder if this video was going to make sense for what I was trying to do, because my whole intentions that I talked about in the beginning of the vlog is that I just wanted to spotlight some female horror authors, talk about the women who are writing horror, the books they're writing, check out some stuff from women versus being inundated by many male authors in the horror genre. I think in my head, I thought that meant I had to love all of the books and like scream about them from the rooftops, or else I wasn't doing an effective job at doing what I was trying to do. So then I thought maybe I should just cancel this vlog and then maybe do like a recommendations video of book recommendations of horror books that were written by women, so I could talk about books that I knew that I loved and spotlight and bring attention to those. Basically, I just felt like I couldn't say anything bad about any of the books I read in this vlog, or else it didn't work. And then the more I thought about it, which is why I took a couple day break, I don't think that's true. I enjoyed all of the stories that I read in this vlog. So I did enjoy The Last House on Needless Street. I'll give you a couple more insights now that I've thought about this a little bit longer in the ending and where the story ends up going. But like, I enjoyed reading it. I thought this was a well-written book and I would definitely read more from this author. And The Hollow Places, I felt the same way. I thought it was great writing. I would definitely read from this author again. The story just wasn't really a like type of trope that I tend to enjoy, because I just don't really like portal fantasy, but I think a lot of people could like this book. And then the short story, of course, I like this. It was just 15 pages. I just tend to read a little more critically. I guess not always. Sometimes I just read for fun and don't really think about it, and I just slap 5-star ratings on books and call it a day. And if you look at my rating system, it doesn't really make a ton of sense, and there's not a lot of consistency, especially over the years, of like, what's a 3-star, what's a 5-star, and the types of books that I like, because my reading taste changes. I think I just spiraled into this mindset of feeling like I couldn't say bad things about the books, but I don't think I said anything bad. I just read a lot of books. I read over 100 books in a year, and so I have a lot of things to compare books to. And when I talk about books, I like to try to talk about the things I am enjoying, the things I'm not enjoying, what types of people I think would enjoy the books, and what types of people I think might not enjoy the books. I think that is just the way to talk about books and make it interesting. If I talked about every book and gave it a 5-star rating in a reading vlog, that would just not be authentic. The purpose of reading vlogs for me is to like document a reading journey of finding the books that you like a lot and the books that were just like okay, and then highlighting like the audience that those books can be for. All that to say, I enjoyed all of these books. I would recommend all these books. I would recommend that you read them all. I think these are great horror authors. Obviously, Charlotte Perkins Gilman is from, I don't know when this was published, the 1800s, the 1900s. first published in January of 1892. So she's obviously no longer with us, but obviously a classic horror author who I would check out more from. And then T. Kingfisher and Catriona Ward are both authors of today that we can continue supporting and checking out and giving attention to and letting more women have the spotlight in the horror genre. So all that said, I still want you to pick up these books, and I still want to appreciate what women authors are bringing to the horror genre. I think I will do a recommendations video in the future once I have more books gathered together in a list where I can recommend horror books written by women, because I would love to like just put that together and then just really gush about all of the ones that I love in a video too. But also I wanted to talk about, funnily enough, the next book that I picked up is this book, Monster She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. And once I picked this up, I was like, oh my gosh, I should have included this in the vlog. Like, it would have made sense, but I don't know. It's nonfiction and I kind of want to just read it over a longer period of time. So this is a collection of essays on a bunch of different women authors in the horror and speculative fiction genre from over the years. And so you can see the table of contents, how many different authors are featured here. It's divided into different sections for the founding mothers, women who are writing ghost stories, occult stories, women who wrote the pulps, haunting the home, paperback horror, the future of horror and speculative fiction, new goths. There's a bunch of different sections in here. And so I've been reading through this. I'm probably like 25% through right now. But this book is awesome and serves the exact purpose of what I was trying to do in this video. So I definitely want to recommend that you pick this one up as well. Even though I'm not done with it, I think I'm just going to be reading this one over the stretch of October because it is just a bunch of small essays, and so it can get like a little bit repetitive to just sit and try to read all in one span. I think it's meant to be read over a longer period of time. But these authors put together this essay collection that goes into all of these awesome women in history who were questioning the norms of society and doing things that people said women couldn't do and writing these stories that people said women couldn't write. And I think this book is just so awesome and I'm having such a fun time with it. And so I would highly recommend picking this one up too if you are interested in just learning more about women horror authors over the years. To give you some insight into who's in this book. Also, it has gorgeous illustrations all throughout. It's just a really well put together book. So I really, really do recommend it. But to give you some insight into a couple of the women who are featured in this, you have some of the big popular names you've definitely heard of, like Shirley Jackson, Daphne du Maurier, Toni Morrison, Anne Radcliffe, Elizabeth Gaskell, V.C. Andrews, Anne Rice, Helen Oyemi, a lot of very popular authors. But there's also many in here that I've personally never heard of, and so I've really enjoyed getting to read about those women and the stories that they created, like Amelia Edwards, Paula E. Hopkins, Catherine Lucille Moore, Joanne Fishman, Jewel Gomez, Suzanne Hill, Edith Wharton, Margaret Oliphant. So I am really just learning a lot about women that I've never even heard of, and I'm really excited to be able to take notes while I'm reading this, because each little section about the author will end with reading list recommendations of a book that you should definitely read from them, or a short story, another option from their list of works, and then also related works. So sometimes that's adaptations of their stories that have been made, or if other authors are writing and like mentioning their stuff, they'll recommend those as well. But this is just a really, really great resource for learning more about the women who pioneered horror and speculative fiction. And so I'd highly recommend picking this one up too. Okay, really quick before we wrap, I did want to address The Last House on Needless Street again and just tell you kind of where I'm at after thinking about it for a couple of days. I still have not heard anyone's thoughts of anyone else reading this book. I think it's just really soon and people haven't read it yet because it just recently came out. To be fair, I'm not doing like a ton of digging. I'm just scrolling through my usual feeds and waiting to see if people that I usually see reading horror books are talking about it, and I just haven't heard or seen or caught anything from them yet. So I'm sure I could definitely find reviews of this if I wanted to. I just haven't like gone out of my way. Anyways, I think I've decided to stay on this like 3-star rating for this book. I did think it was good writing. I was intrigued. I thought it did some unique things. And as far as how I feel about where the book goes and the broader story that is being told, I think it passes the vibe check for me. Obviously, of course, everyone's going to have different opinions about this, and the people specifically that this story impacts and is most related to are the voices that I would recommend listening to on if they think this is good representation or if they think this is harmful. I'm not one to speak for that, but like I said, I'm just trying to wait until I hear more people giving reviews of this and hear more people's thoughts to see what the greater reception of it is. But for me, I see what the author was trying to do, and I feel like I have to talk about this in spoilers for a quick second, so I'll just really quickly say what I mean of that. But if you don't want to know the spoilers, skip to where the bar is no longer on the screen. But I see how the author was like, okay, dissociative identity disorder often gets villainized in horror and thrillers, but I want to write something that shows how the condition is related to survival and helping people cope. Where I was like iffy on it was that for so much of the book, you do think Teddy is the villain. He is portrayed as being this awful man who kidnapped this girl and did terrible, terrible things to her. That's what you're told as the reader. And so you're being led to believe all of that. And then at the end, it's like, oh, never mind, that didn't happen. And so that's why I was like, ugh, does that still like kind of villainize him though? Because it makes you think he did. But now I'm wondering if like that was all intentional for her to like show how easily you can villainize someone with this condition, but you shouldn't. But you didn't know he had the condition. So I'm still kind of like, I don't know. I just don't know. I have to think about this more. I have to talk to more people about this. I have to have discussions about it to really figure it out because it is just such a sensitive topic. I don't want there to be like a harmful message behind it, but I'm just not the person to say whether or not it is. So that's where I stand. Probably okay, but like still waiting, and my opinion could definitely change in the future. So if you didn't want the spoilers, you're picking back up now, and I don't remember what the last thing I said was. But yeah, I'm gonna keep it a 3-star. I'm gonna keep waiting to see what other people say. So that is it for the end of this vlog. Please do comment down below and let me know who your favorite women horror authors are. Whose books do you think I should be checking out, or short stories? My answer to that question is definitely Carmen Maria Machado right now. She is one of my favorite women in horror. Her work is so unique and so well written, and it really just makes me so jealous that I can't be a writer like that. Like, where do you get that skill? Where does that come from? How do you get that? I would like to know. But anyway, let me know your recommendations down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.